Life Audio.
My good friend Rolando Gonzales says that generosity is the currency of the kingdom. It's what makes the kingdom move forward, helps us to move forward in the kingdom. And yet this holiday season, with inflation and possible recession and all sorts of other problems going on in our country and around the world, we might be thinking we really don't have the money to give this year. And yet people need hope, maybe now more than ever. I have with me today Tim Turner with Satisfeed. It's a great ministry and a great organization, and we're going to be talking about practical ways that we can spread the kingdom of God. Now, go into the description, and there's a link there for a free book. Go ahead and click on that, and remember to subscribe. And before we get into this episode, remember, here is a word from our sponsors. Well, welcome back to Kingdom Over Coffee. I have Tim Turner with me today. Tim is someone that I have known, I don't know if I want to say how many years. I don't know if I can think about it. It's been over 20. We'll put it that way. It's been over 20 years, probably closer to 30, that I have known Tim. And so, Tim, why don't you just let everybody know who you are?
My name is Tim Turner, and some people laugh at me when I say Tim Turner because they think of Timmy Turner and the Fairly Odd Family. So, but others, when I introduce myself, I say Tim Turner like Ted, only much richer. And of course, I get a chuckle, and so then I say he owns the bison on 1 billion acres, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills.
There you go.
And we work on from there. I'm a father of five adult children, 4 of whom are married. All 5 live in Atlanta. Grandfather of 7, ranging in age from 10 months to college freshmen and everything in between.
Yeah.
Patty and I have been married for 43 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
You know what? It's actually 44.
Oh, there you go.
And
I'll cut that part out. I'll fix that in post.
we were given the opportunity to celebrate our 40th anniversary by traveling the West Coast. So we got on the Starlight Coastal Train and went from Vancouver, Seattle, down to L.A.
Wow.
That
sounds great.
It was quite the experience. But I'll tell you this, train travel in the United States is not for the faint of heart.
Oh, really?
It is nothing like what we see in White Christmas with Bing Crosby.
Right?
So I would encourage you not to do train travel for an extended period of time.
Okay.
So
that's really interesting because, just as an aside, there was some friends of mine talk about this trip, and I think it's cross country, or maybe it's like Texas to California or something. But it's where writers get on a train, and like you're just supposed to write. It's like a writing retreat, but it's on a train. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool, but maybe it wouldn't be as comfortable as it sounds.
No, it's nothing like the Christmas train and David Baldacci. No, not in any way, shape, or form. Patty and I moved to Atlanta just shy of our first anniversary in April of 1979. And when we moved here, there was a population clock at the Darlington Apartments on Peachtree, right across the street from Piedmont Hospital. And at that time, the clock said 900,000 in the entire metropolitan Atlanta area.
No way.
Yeah.
1979. By the time I got here in 85, it was in the million, at least. It was a couple million.
Well, and Gwinnett County now has over 900,000.
They're
pushing almost a million.
Yeah.
So here we are 43 years later, and the population has just skyrocketed.
Yeah, and another interesting thing, people may not know, you're around the world or other places of the country listening to this, but Gwinnett County is one of the most diverse counties in the world.
Right.
Like Gwinnett County is like one of the closest or the closest to the actual population,
Right.
Whatever thing of
ethnicity,
right, of the country. Maybe I think like sort of like it mirrors it very closely. So anyway, not only has it grown in population in Gwinnett County specifically. I mean, when we moved to Gwinnett County in '85. There was nothing out here. I mean, they had just built that one mall, which brought even more people out. But
right.
And it was, good school system and all that stuff. But anyway, all that to say is it's just, blossomed since then with all different sorts of kind of people and different religions and ethnicities and cultures and everything. And I love that part. I love that my kids are in a much more diverse sort of world than I grew up in. We had maybe 5 or 10 people of color in my whole school in high school, when I went. So I love that part. And so Tim is, I don't know, what's your official title for Satisfeed? CEO? Or you like
founder and
CEO of this organization called Satisfeed? And so maybe just give a little bit of background and go into kind of what sparked this idea for this organization, Satisfeed?
The basic chassis for Satisfeed is we are a food pantry. And so every Saturday of the year, except for 2 or 3, we set up a food distribution in Lawrenceville. And we serve between 200 and 300 families in a 2-hour period of time. Mm-hmm. And we have a very simple registration process, and people present themselves. We feed them. We give them 70 to 80 pounds of food that for a family of 5 should stretch their budget 10 days or so.
Right.
And that's what we do. I got to this point because I met a man who was running a food co-op in the Summerhill neighborhood of Atlanta, which is basically the parking lot to the old Turner Field.
Okay.
And the old Fulton County Stadium.
Got it.
And I just started asking Chad questions. I said, Chad, why? He said, well, they need food. And what he built was a community. He would bring 25 families into a group setting, and twice a month. And those people began to build relationship with each other. Mm. They invested their time, their talents, and their wisdom to help everyone in the group get fed. And I was just mesmerized by it. So I would meet with Chad periodically because I had more questions. The biggest question was, we live in the breadbasket of the world. How is there such a hunger issue? Mm. What is the problem? What are the underlying problems? And I kept asking questions and learning more and more about how he did it, for whom. And then one day, I decided to pick up the telephone and call the Board of Education because I sensed that the students who were receiving free and reduced meals during the school year, that they didn't have a source or an access in the summertime.
Right. Or holidays to some degree.
Right. And so I just decided to pick up the phone and ask. And they got back to me about 2 months later and said, well, we kind of serve the kids who come to our summer school program for 3 weeks, but they have to get to the school and they have to get home. But while they're here, we feed them. And I thought, that's not an answer.
For more of this amazing conversation with Tim Turner about Satisfeed, stay tuned. For right now, a word from our sponsor.
I mean, that's what you do, but that's not a solution.
Right.
Because at that time, over 50% of the student body was receiving free and reduced meals.
Right.
9 months out of the year.
Right. Breakfast and lunch usually, both.
Right.
2 meals at least.
Right.
Yeah.
And many times they were getting an after-school snack.
Yeah.
So I distributed, we did a Christmas distribution at an apartment complex. 72 apartments, about 95% Hispanic. And in a driving rainstorm in December, we distributed 72 boxes of food. And many of those apartments were occupied by 6 or 8 adult men.
Wow.
And it was really cool. One of the men I met, turned out he'd been living in the States for about 20 years. And he was sending money back home every week. And he sent enough money for his daughter to go through dental school. In that same complex were 2 Hispanic women with children, and they started a breakfast and dinner business by not enchiladas. What was it? I can't remember. But the guys in the morning, they bring their styrofoam plate, and the ladies would sell them breakfast and pack their lunch and pack whatever they were going to have for lunch.
Okay.
And then when they came home at night, they'd open their hands, open up the styrofoam, they'd fill it with food. And so the ladies built a business in the apartment complex to meet the needs of the guys.
Wow.
So it was really cool. I did a mobile food pantry for 6 months. I used a yellow Ryder truck, box truck.
Right.
And my guests would bring either their laundry baskets or they bring their banana boxes. And I would set up tables with tables of food, and they would walk through and pick out whatever food they wanted and go on their merry way. I stopped after 6 months because the food source became too many carbs and not enough protein. And it wasn't dietary. It wasn't a good diet. Mm-hmm. So I backed out of it. Then I morphed into a summer lunch program, distributing brown bag lunches to students in the summertime.
Okay.
And 4 or 5 summers we did brown bag lunches.
Now were you working during this time?
Yes and no.
I mean, but this is before the story I heard about you guys driving back from.
Yeah.
This is all before that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were doing a lot of this, while you're working, while you're, doing not normal life, but kind of normal life, and getting more and more involved in these sort of opportunities. So those the brown bag lunch, and so this is probably before not way before, but it was before COVID and all that stuff. So
Right.
this is 2000, 15, 16 at least.
Right, 14 through 18.
Okay.
And in the summer of 14, we served 5,000 brown bag lunches.
Wow.
That was a sandwich, a sweet, a savory, and a water. And then in the summer of 18, we distributed 25,000 brown bag lunches. We brought on a couple of partners who were distributing as well.
Okay.
And in the spring of 17, my mom passed away. And on that drive home from Ohio, I turned to my son, my daughter, and my wife, and I said, I'm done. I'm just going to retire. And so I turned in my 2 weeks' notice. I retired on a Friday. And the following Monday, I refired with Satisfeed. I didn't know at that time that it was going to be named Satisfeed.
Okay.
And that's another story in and of itself.
Okay.
But that was the beginning.
Okay.
And we finally got our nonprofit designation from the IRS in August of 19. We actually launched the food pantry in September of 18.
Okay.
And at that time, well, let me tell you this story. I put A-frame signs at the entrances to the parking lot where we were operating out of because I was co-located in a church. And I saw a car creep onto the parking lot, come into a parking space, and park, and mom gets out of the driver's side, daughter gets out of the passenger side, and they slowly walk up the sidewalk. And mom opens the door and says, "Is this where we can get food?" I said, "Yeah, come on in." And that was the beginning for me. Because I realized that the longest walk for any of my guests was the walk from the parking lot to the front door, setting aside their pride and asking for help. I soon learned that it was mom's name was Kimberly and daughter's name was Bianca. And Kim was just slaving at 2, 3, 4 jobs.
Wow.
And Bianca was going to the charter school across the street. And so that was the fall of 18. And so we're in November now. So in October of this year, I saw a news story about a student at Norcross High School who had been murdered off campus. And I thought, and I got a call from Kimberly. She was totally stressed. All she could do was cry and scream. Her son, DeAndre, was the student that was murdered.
Awful.
And we meaning everyone involved with Satisfeed, had the opportunity at various times to serve Kimberly, to serve Bianca, to serve DeAndre. And it just, it brought everything into focus for me. That food is what brought them in the door, but it was our willingness to serve that kept them.
Well, and for a lot of people who don't obviously know, as we're getting to know what Satisfeed does, it's one of the reasons why I love it is it's a very relational atmosphere. So and I was telling Tim after the first time I was there, and I just kind of went by myself. Just he invited me, just come check it out. Just come see and like there's a lot of cars. Like he's talking about 200 or 300 cars that are going through this line in the space of a couple hours. It's really more like an hour and a half, hour 45, because it really slows down there towards the end. But as that's going, Tim and other people who are kind of regulars and work those Saturday mornings with Satisfeed or leaders or whoever they are. And there's a lot of volunteers that are there, in and out on too. But for the leaders, they know people's names. They, there's a very gregarious hello and how are you, and it's very relational, while at the same time being, like I said, fairly efficient. You're getting cars pumping through, and I really love those sort of aspects to it, and so so what Tim is describing is something that I've seen in a lot of ways when I've been there doing volunteering with my family, my church, where it's just like it's very relational. You get to say hello to people, even though it's kind of like a drive-through thing. I really dig that part of it, and something I wanted to kind of mention, for people. So we're out in the suburbs, we're in Gwinnett County, and something that has been something I've dealt with as a pastor and just as a person who likes to get involved in these sort of opportunities. I think a lot of times people in the suburbs feel like we got to go all the way down into Atlanta to deal with this. And to be fair, there isn't really a huge homeless population in Gwinnett County. We do have a homeless population,
about 5,000 people,
and so, but they're not easy to find or see, and so it's kind of a different element to that, but what we do have are people who do live in homes, or they're functionally homeless in some ways. Right. They're functionally homeless in the sense of they're in temporary housing, they're living with family, or they have a place, but because of their budget and people and everything, they don't have enough money for food. And so just to let people know, it's I thought it was a very cool thing because I knew about this. And so as we were just kind of getting more involved and hearing kind of Tim talk about, people who may have homes and jobs and all of that sort of stuff. Because I think a lot of people think, well, if they've got a home and a job, like that, they're good. And there are still people in America who, even here in the suburbs, in the land of opportunity and all the sort of stuff you think about with America, who have those sort of deficiencies. So I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, but just to let people know, there is need, and meeting that need where we are, I think, is a very important sort of element.
I'll talk to the issue because 86% of the folks we serve are Hispanic. And I own Satisfeed in my heart. Mm. So when I say I'm really meaning we at Satisfeed. We have over a dozen families from Romania.
Right.
And we have, I have several families from the Pacific Islands. So it is a worldwide community that we serve. And it is a reflection of the worldwide community that lives and dwells in Gwinnett County. Here's the other interesting part. We serve people from over 13 counties.
Oh, wow. So people drive in? Mm-hmm. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. In fact, I had a family the other day that drove from Alpharetta, and it took them over 45 minutes. But they came.
Yeah.
So, I had the unique opportunity last week in serving the people that we had one family of volunteers, and mom runs a Spanish immersion language business.
Cool.
And so she came on campus with her husband, son, and 2 daughters. All 5 are well-versed in Spanish. So mom and her 4th grade daughter tag teamed with me and helped me to speak Spanish to all the guests that needed it. And one of the ladies that came through, I could tell it was her first time. And part of the reason I could tell was because she didn't want to make eye contact with me. But there was pain. I knew there was pain. And so in my best broken Spanish, I asked her if I could pray for her. And she just started bawling. And it was so refreshing for me to be given permission to cry out to God.
Yeah.
And mom and daughter were like, oh my goodness. And it's just the most remarkable sense of being in the presence and being given permission to cry out.
Yep.
It's just incredible.
Well, and, you're hitting on something that, I've talked about and we talk about, and it's becoming more prominent when this is good, but something that we at Phoenix Roasters and with my church, as we do things downtown and with other areas, something that is really a big part of who we are with missions is dignifying people, is dignity. And somewhat you're talking about with, even asking for help and the pride of going, that short walk, even if it might be a short walk, but it's very humbling. It's very, there's a lot of opportunities. It doesn't have to be, but there's a lot of opportunities for shame and all of these sort of ideas. And so being able to just dignify people as human beings, you do a great job with that. You get people's stories because, again, it's not that these people aren't working hard or not trying or anything. Is that there could be a whole lot of reasons why they're in this position, and you kind of have to get their story and you have to dignify them and not assume, well, they just work hard or whatever, not, and by doing that, the food, and I know this is part of your heart, and you can kind of speak to this, the food, the giving away of food is really just a touch point for more things, like you've already talked about with the relationship downtown and the 25 families, and that was kind of a huge part of it. And I know there's a great story with someone from our church, because we went down there and volunteered a couple times, and one of the women in our church, her husband, David, is Latino, and he had a stroke several years ago and was somewhat disabled, was in a wheelchair, and it was hard for him to kind of get motivation, and, he was a fairly active person, before the stroke. But the fact that he knew English and Spanish well enough that, you were able to kind of include him, right, was such an answer to prayer for me, because it was something that we had prayed about. So I don't know if you have any more to say about sort of that situation or any other situations like that, where even just within the volunteers, you just sort of see a lot of transformation and growth,
We, David and his wife, Christine, were so enthusiastic about serving in the parking lot We then were able to launch an ESL class.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so in February and March of 22, we held ESL classes, and the age range of the folks was 17 to 70. And David was right in there helping with the teaching and helping with the instructing. And it was so refreshing. It was so encouraging. And his smile was contagious.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful situation. We recently, we were in one location in Duluth, and then in March of this year, that location was sold. So we had to shut down.
And you were sharing it with another partner.
Right. We were co-located with the church. And so we were shut down from March the 1st to October the 1st. Meanwhile, we had built relationship with many of our guests and with many of our volunteers, and they wanted to help, but there was really nothing that they could do during the period of time that we were closed. One of the volunteers, his name is Oscar. I kept him in touch, and when we relaunched, he was kind enough and enthusiastic enough that he wanted to come and volunteer before he picked up his food. So Oscar would come on campus at 7:30 in the morning, and
On a Saturday.
Right.
And
I'm laughing because his vehicle of choice was a retired ambulance. So he would come on campus tooting the horn and tooting the siren. And so we knew Oscar was on campus. So he comes
I think
on.
I'm going to start doing that. That sounds like a great idea.
So he comes on campus. He's second or third in line. He parks, and he hops out of his vehicle, and he looks to me, and he says, "Okay, boss, what are we going to do now?" And so he did whatever he was asked to do, and some things that I didn't even ask him to do. And the first Saturday that we were back in session, he brought his son Oscar with him. And Oscar's on the spectrum. He's just a very likable kid, 5, 6, 7 years old. I can't remember. Very gregarious, very energetic. And so he helped Dad while we were setting up. And then Oscar Dad comes over to me and he whispers in my ear, "Oscar's going to have cancer surgery." And I said, "Well, Oscar, can I pray for Oscar?" He said, "Please, please, please." So I went over and I prayed with young Oscar. And every Saturday, Oscar comes. Young Oscar is supposed to go to his lessons. That's what Oscar Dad calls them. But Oscar comes on campus. He does whatever we need. He does it enthusiastically. He does it with a smile on his face. And the opportunity that I have to reach out to him, to pray for he and his family, to pray for young Oscar, it's just another one of those moments that money can't buy. It's just our availability and our willingness.
Yeah, I just had this conversation this morning about how, one of my main things I love to do in my life is to help other people find their dream and their purpose. And, I love having those conversations. I love hearing those stories. I love hearing all of that. I love trying to encourage people and challenge them to kind of, what's God called you to do? We're not all called to do the same thing, but we're all called to do something. And so, but as I've learned through the years, people when you start talking about those sort of things to people, they have this idea like, oh, well, my dream is to, let's say, make a video game or something. I don't know, whatever. I'm just throwing that out there. And then they just wait for something to happen.
Yeah.
And I have to tell people like that's how it's not going to happen. That's exactly and I tell people, God can't steer a parked car. God can't steer a parked car. You got to get moving. And the best way to get moving, you just start loving and serving people where you are. And so whatever these opportunities are, like with Satisfeed, or, if you're not in Atlanta, like there's all sorts of opportunities everywhere. You just start loving people and serving them. And it's been my experience that God just supernaturally does stuff. He just drops things in your lap and you're like, well, and it seems like it comes out of nowhere, but I'm telling you, it doesn't come out of nowhere. If you're moving, just loving people, serving people, man, good things start to happen because you're participating in the design of God and who He is, and it makes him. He's already happy, but it makes him want to give you more, And so I did want to go back a little bit because I first heard about Satisfeed. So again, as I said before, I've known Tim for probably 25. I would say it's 25 years is probably safe, and his family, and been good friends with his daughter and everybody. But I first heard about Satisfeed during COVID.
Okay.
So COVID hit. There was lockdowns and. All these sort of things are happening, as many people in the world obviously know, and in America. And I was very honored to be invited. I was like, I have this like little church in the middle of nowhere. I was invited to be on like a pastor's call, on a call with like pastors in Atlanta. And like one race was there, and like people from other mega churches and stuff. And there was just little old me. But I'm friends with a lot of these guys through the coffee and through some other things. And so I was invited, and it was awesome. It was one of those amazing times of seeing the church actually be the church. Like people were there from different races and religious cultures and denominations. And it was just like, it was a very simple, how can we help people? That was it. That was the only thing. Like it wasn't, fighting over this doctrinal stance or anything. It was just a simple, how can we help people? People are in need. How can we help them? And that's the first time I really heard about Satisfeed, because you were on one of those calls. I was like, oh, there's Tim. That's awesome. And so talk about how like Satisfeed started like right before COVID. Like, I mean, it was, I don't know if it's called Satisfeed yet, but it was like a lot of that stuff really sort of kind of came to fruition. And then 6 months later we had, but God really moved through you guys. I mean, so talk about some of that kind of time frame and just how you saw God do so much.
Sure. February of 20, the end of February of 20, we're serving 40 families, 2 Saturdays a month, and right at 7,000 to 8,000 pounds of food. We had 19 refrigerators and freezers in a 950 square foot space.
Like just regular refrigerators,
Yeah.
or like just like home, like you would see in a house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Home refrigerators, freezers, chest freezers.
Okay.
And interestingly, I was using Facebook Marketplace tracking down these appliances.
Okay.
So I literally drove
Oh, wow.
to Forsyth, Georgia on the south side, and up to West Forsyth on the north side, finding these freezers and refrigerators. And the first Saturday of COVID, actually the first Saturday we were closed. The second Saturday, on that Friday night, my family had a family meeting with Dad.
Now, you say your family, like
I'm talking about 18 and counting.
18 people.
18 people.
So you're talking about the kids, their spouses, the grandkids.
Right. We were all on Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, you were on Zoom. Okay.
And they say, Dad, you are not going into Satisfeed tomorrow.
I hadn't heard this one.
They cut me off at my knees, literally. But I said, okay. I didn't obey. I got to Satisfeed at 6 o'clock in the morning and set everything up.
On your own, or were there other people?
Just me.
Okay.
So I wasn't being exposed. And gave all the instructions. And then I left. And I came home. And I paced in the kitchen like a caged animal for 4 hours. Patty didn't want to have anything to do with me. I was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And by the end, we had served 138 families, and it looked like the locusts had hit the refrigerators and freezers. There wasn't a speck of food left. It was gone. Mm. But what happened was the staff of the church and several other volunteers walked in and said, we got it. And they proceeded to distribute the food. And that was the beginning. Mm. At the peak, we were serving 500 families a week.
Oh, wow.
And
because you gave like 1 million pounds of food or something.
We did.
Wow, with some crazy number, right?
We did.
In 20 or 21? Which one?
From March of 20 through May of 21, we served 1 million pounds of food. Mm. And in that period of time, through the CARES Act and through the Hudgens Family Foundation, we acquired 3 40-foot refrigerated containers, mm-hmm. a 26-foot refrigerated truck, a 16-foot refrigerated truck, 2 forklifts, material handling devices. It was absolutely remarkable. Mm. But that first refrigerated container that we received, on Thursday of that week, we were praying in the parking lot. We didn't know where we were going to store the food. We didn't know how we were going to store the food. And so we simply prayed, God, we need a container. We need a refrigerated container. That Friday, in the mail, was a check from the Hudgens Family Foundation. Mm. And that began our journey. So today, the campus where we're now located, we have 6 containers, 4 of which are refrigerated, 2 dry. We look like a MASH unit, literally. It's just remarkable.
You have helicopters? You have any helicopters?
Occasionally they fly over because we share the parking lot with Gwinnett Striper's baseball stadium.
Oh, that's right.
So occasionally so it's it's quite remarkable.
That's awesome. And so let's kind of bring it up to speed of now. So you reopened after a few months off in October?
October the 1st.
October, right? Yeah. And it was a blessing. It's a huge parking lot. It's a great spot. And there was a lot of prayer and stuff going through those months trying to figure it out. But now that we're in I don't want to say a recession, but now that we have record inflation. Are you seeing those sort of, effects in the people? Are you seeing more people? Is it pretty much the same? Like, are you seeing any like effects from that?
I have two effects. The first is we moved from Duluth to Lawrenceville. So drive time wise, it's about a 20-minute drive. So we lost some people that.
So some people it got a little farther for them.
Right. On the other hand, we're seeing on average 30 new families a week.
Oh, wow.
First timers. And so the need is continuing to increase. At the same time, we're involved with a program with the Atlanta Community Food Bank that enables us to pick up donations from Publix.
Right.
Which is just incredible. It's yesterday. No. Today's Tuesday, right?
Today is Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yesterday, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, when we made our run, we ended up picking up over 6,000 pounds of food that we are now going to be able to distribute to our guests.
Over the next couple of weeks.
Over the next couple of weeks.
Did you get any turkeys?
We did. And we got their prepared meals.
That's awesome. For people who don't know, Publix is a grocery store chain here in the South. I don't know if they're nationwide or whatever, but
Florida's their home base. Yeah. What else? Oh, volunteers.
Right.
We early on in the pandemic. So pandemic started in March. In April, a middle school launched a program to feed the students.
Right.
700 meals for 700 students. And it was a wonderful effort, but leadership was very disappointed in the results.
Okay.
They knew of me. They knew of Satisfeed. And so they called me. And they said, how can we help you feed our students? And that was the beginning of an incredible relationship with that high school cluster.
Which cluster?
Duluth High School.
Duluth High School, okay.
So it was Duluth High School, Duluth Middle School, Coleman Middle School, and then 4 elementary schools.
Yeah, 4
and 2 of the elementary schools are Title IX.
No,
Title I.
Easily, Title I.
Title I. And Britt, the volunteers were amazing. They kept coming and coming and coming and coming. Then we launched a distribution at Duluth Middle School in the summertime to replace summer lunch. And it was so heartwarming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and there have been a lot of churches, I know specifically 12 Stone, but there have been a lot of churches who have tried to do a lot of that over the summer, who try to be, even before COVID, they were doing a lot of that. But obviously because of COVID and now because of, because of inflation, I mean, it's just a lot. If your budget is already strained or not enough, I mean, because the prices of food have really increased, obviously. That's the whole thing about inflation, not to mention gas prices getting to Satisfeed and all that sort of stuff. So here we are in the Christmas holidays.
Yep.
And, it's one of those things where, again, I was talking about this recently about how with some of the nonprofits that I know, and we have one too with the Phoenix Roasters Foundation, but there are a lot of nonprofits who are kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and they're like, we're probably aren't going to get as much this year, and because of different elements. And yet, I actually think this is an even greater opportunity to give. As for people of faith, I'm not telling people to, not feed their families, but I am saying, like, giving it's not a practical thing. It's an act of faith. Like, when we give to those in need, when we give for whatever charitable purposes to help other people, it is one of those things, like I was saying earlier, where you want to see God move, you start serving people, and He will move. Like, it's a guarantee. I'll put it out there. People might hunt me down later, I guess, but I don't think they will. But I think we have an opportunity now with the culture the way that it is, and with people needing to see hope, needing to see that people care, that people aren't just going to circle the wagons during these times, and to use that phrase. So, what are some ways that people can give or get involved? Like, I know this podcast goes everywhere, so obviously there's volunteer opportunities here in the Atlanta area, but what are some other ways that people can kind of get involved with Satisfeed?
The simplest way is through a simple math that we discovered that was handed to us by the food bank, by Feeding America. And that is that $1 donated will allow us to distribute 4 meals. Typically, and I'll give you this example. I asked a family of 4 to take a banana box to Kroger and fill it with the food that they would usually get and bring me the receipt. They filled it. It was about 60 pounds.
Okay.
Wonderful food. And it was $75. Well, that same 60 pounds of food, if I buy it through the food bank, is $6.40. So $1 buys 4 meals. So if you are willing, you can go to our website, which is Satisfeed. And I promise you, spell check will change it to Satisfied. So it's satisfeed.org/donate.
Okay.
That's the simplest, that's the most effective way. We also have a sign-up genius for our volunteers.
Right. There's a link on the website for that too, right?
There's a link on the website for that as well. And it's very interesting. What I've learned is that we need at least 35 people in the trenches actually packing the food and getting it into the vehicles. Mm-hmm. And I need another 5 to 10 out in the parking lot. I guess, for lack of a better term, parking lot surfing, going to each car and confirming who they are and getting them taken care of. Mm. It's something as simple as food can bring so much joy and so much relationship. It's amazing.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like about it is one of the things I look for, because I have kids, and I try to look for opportunities where kids can get involved. And now that my kids are older, there are more of those, right? But I've seen, like you're talking about Oscar Jr. I don't know if that's his name, Jr. or not, but you're talking about Oscar Jr., who is maybe 8 years old or something, but he helps. Mm-hmm. And I've seen younger kids, get involved and help. And every time that I've gone, like, the people who go with us from our church usually, they always come away happy. Like it is a joyful time. Like, it's hard work. It's not, it's like you're moving. Like you're not standing around. You're going to be moving for about a good hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's probably good because especially now as it gets a little cold in December, but people have so much joy, and it really is right. It's more blessed to give than receive, and when you participate in those sort of things, that's a principle of the kingdom that we're talking about, and getting people involved and asking people to donate, and we were talking before we were recording about how I've had to get over some of my issues with asking for money or asking for donations at church or whatever, and a lot of what has helped me is to realize like it's not that I need the money. It's like I'm asking other people to give because I want to give you joy. Like I want it. So when we're asking people to volunteer or give money to Satisfeed or whatever is going on around you, it's not to try to guilt you into anything. It's like if you'll do this, you'll actually be more blessed. It's counterintuitive in this world where we think a scarcity mindset. There's only so much, but in the kingdom, it's unlimited. And when you give, God starts to show you how unlimited it is. You get food truck, containers and refrigerated containers seemingly from out of nowhere, but you're just continuing to move forward. So I love all of that. So you guys go to satisfeed.org, right? And I'll put a link in the notes and stuff in the description of the podcast here. Well, Tim, this is awesome, like I knew it would be. And so, Tim, if you would just pray us out and just pray for the people who have been listening, that they would be encouraged and so they would find joy through just giving somehow through this holiday season.
Father, thank you. Thank you that you are Jehovah Jireh, God our provider.
Amen.
Thank you, Father, that no matter what the need is, no matter where the pain may be, you give us opportunity to reach out and touch someone to make a difference. Father, your love is amazing. We thank you for the gift of your Son. We thank you for the gift of your Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And we thank you for the peace that transcends all understanding. Guide us and protect us, Father. Help us to see into the unseen.
Amen.
And help us to be your servants. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, bro.